Camping horror stories always start the same way, with a quiet night, a warm fire, and the feeling you're miles away from anything dangerous. But that's the trick. The wilderness doesn't warn you when something's wrong. By the time you realize it, someone or something is already close enough to touch your tent. These are 3 true camping stories submitted by viewers. Stories that begin innocent and ended with people running for their lives. If you're new, subscribe and join the Nightmare Society, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I always thought you could tell when someone was dangerous, but the only thing off about the man at the next campsite was how friendly he was and how he already knew my name. I was camping last summer with my friend Tyler at a state park about 2 hours from where we live. It wasn't some deep backcountry wilderness. This was the kind of place with numbered sites, a map at the entrance, and a little camp stall that sold firewood and ice cream sandwiches. In other words, exactly the kind of place you let your guard down. We booked site 15, one of the quieter ones at the end of the loop. No electricity, but a nice flat pad for the tent and a little path that led to the creek. We got there just before sunset on a Friday night, set up tent, got a fire going, and cracked open a couple of beers. Just a normal, peaceful evening. The site next to us, Site 14, was empty when we arrived. It wasn't until it was fully dark and we were roasting hot dogs over the fire that we saw headlights coming slowly down the loop road. A beat-up silver SUV pulled into Site 14. One guy stepped out, older than us, maybe late 40s, ball cap, flannel jacket, cargo pants. He waved like we were old neighbours. "Evening fellas," he called over. "Didn't think anyone else picked the quiet section." We did the usual small talk. Where are you from? How long are you staying? You know, that kind of thing. He said his name was Doug, that he'd like to come out here to clear his head. He was almost aggressively normal, too normal, the way someone sounds when they're trying to make you comfortable. At one point, he said, "You're Tyler, right? And you must be..." He paused, snapping his fingers like he was reaching for a memory. "You're Mark." He was close. My name's Matt, but we never told him Tyler's name. I laughed it off, assuming he maybe heard us say each other's names while we were setting up. But later, when I replayed everything in my head, I realised we hadn't. We wrapped up the night around midnight. The park had quiet hours starting at 11, so we let the fire die and climbed into the tent. I remember thinking how lucky we were. Clear sky, no wind, faint sound of the creek below. It was one of those nights where the outside world feels comfortably far away. At around 3 in the morning, I woke up to pee. I checked my phone, 3:07 AM. I could hear Tyler breathing heavily in his sleeping bag. The air inside the tent was cold and still. I slipped on my shoes, quietly unzipped the tent just enough to step out, and walked over to the edge of the site. The loop road was empty. Site 14 next door was dark. No fire, no lantern light, nothing. Doug must have gone to bed early. As I was standing there, I heard a twig snap behind me, not far, somewhere between our tent and the tree line. I turned, expecting to see a deer or a raccoon. Nothing moved, just our dark tent, the extinguished fire pit, and the silhouette of our car. I told myself I was jumpy from waking up suddenly. I finished and went back to the tent. When I unzipped the door and crouched to get inside, I stopped. The tent smelled wrong. You know how your own tent has that mix of plastic, fabric, your clothes and your breath? This smelled like sweat, like someone who'd been working outside all day and hadn't showered. It was heavy and sour and didn't match what I'd been sleeping in all night. In the dim spill of moonlight coming through the nylon, I could see Tyler's shape in his bag on the left. My bag was on the right. I could also see, very faintly, a darker shape sitting up against the far wall of the tent between our bags. I froze with one knee on the ground, half inside, half outside, my hand still on the zipper. "Tyler," I whispered. The shape didn't move. For a second, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I blinked hard, trying to adjust. The shape resolved into something clearer, a person, sitting cross-legged, head slightly tilted, facing my side of the tent. It was the tiniest sound that gave him away, a slow, wet inhale through his nose. I yanked the zipper down, scrambled backwards out of the tent, and fell onto my back in the dirt. I screamed Tyler's name. He jolted awake, thrashing around inside, confused. The figure lunged for the opening. I kicked my foot out of pure instinct and slammed the sole of my shoe into his face as he came forward. He grunted, more surprised than hurt, and tumbled sideways into the cramped space. Tyler, still half asleep, started panicking and punching wildly, not even knowing who he was hitting. I grabbed the tent's center pole and yanked it sideways with everything I had. The whole structure collapsed inwards. Whoever was inside got tangled in nylon and poles. He screamed, a raw, angry sound that wasn't even trying to sound friendly. "Run!" I shouted. Tyler clawed his way out from under the fabric and bolted with me up the gravel loop towards the other campsite. We didn't stop until we saw the glow of another group's fire and practically crashed into their picnic table. The guy at their site called the ranger. The ranger called the sheriff. When we went back down the loop in a truck with them 20 minutes later, our tent was still collapsed, our car was still there. Site 14, though, was empty. Doug's SUV was gone, almost like he'd never been there. The only thing he left behind were footprints in the dirt between our sides, and a cheap, foldable camping knife laying just inside the tent where the man had been sitting. The blade was already open. The deputy held it up using a pen. "Looks like he was waiting for you to lay back down," he said quietly. A week later, Tyler sent me a news article. It was about a man in his late 40s arrested at another campground, 3 counties away, for breaking into solo campers' tents at night and robbing them at knife point, sometimes worse. His name was Douglas N. The article mentioned one detail that made me physically sick. According to the police report, he liked to learn campers' names from checking the reservation board at the camp office, so it felt more personal when they woke up, and he whispered it to them in the dark. We got lucky. We woke up first. I used to think family campgrounds were the safest place on earth. Bathrooms, hosts, kids on bikes. Nothing bad happens where you can see fairy lights in trees. Well, summer 2021 changed that for me. My husband Dan and I took our 8-year-old daughter Lily to a popular lakeside campground 2 hours from our city. We got one of the electric sites near the back loop, close enough to walk to the playground, far enough that the lake noise didn't keep you up. The first day was exactly what we wanted. Lily caught 2 shiny sunfish off the dock. Dan burnt the first round of burgers. We played Uno by lantern light while people drifted past on the loop road, walking dogs or dragging marshmallow sticky kids to the bathroom. Around dusk, a man walked by our site and slowed. He looked mid-50s, faded ball cap, clean shaven, a blue zip-up jacket even though it was still warm. No dog, no kids, no visible cooler, just a small day pack slung over one shoulder. "Evening," he said. His voice was friendly enough. "Hey," Dan answered. The man's eyes lingered on our car, then on Lily's glow-in-the-dark hoodie, then on our tent. "Nice setup," he said. "You folks here all weekend?" "Yeah," I said. Got lucky, these sights go quick. He smiled at that, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah, gets real busy. You from around here? About 2 hours south, Dan said. Long drive. I bet you're tired. Kids sleep hard after that. His gaze flicked to Lily again. Anybody meeting you up here? No, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. Just us. He nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for that answer, then hitched his pack. Well, enjoy the lake. I'm just over there. He pointed vaguely down the loop and moved on. Dan whispered, Campground small talk, babe. Relax. I tried. We roasted marshmallows. Lily told a long story about a girl in her class who thought raccoons were baby bears. By quiet hours, the campsite was a soft sea of lanterns blinking out. We zipped into the tent, the three of us lined up like pencils. I lay there listening to the occasional car door, the ding of a truck being locked, the electronic chirp of someone's phone. At some point, I drifted off. I woke up to Lily whispering my name. Mum, there's someone outside. My heart jumped so fast I felt dizzy. What? Where? Right there, she whispered. They said my name. Every parent knows the particular cold that runs through you when your kid says something like that in the dark. I strained to hear. At first there was nothing. Then, just barely, the sound of footsteps on gravel. Slow, not going past the site, stopping, starting, right near the tent. Dan murmured, It's probably just someone walking to the bathroom. Then, just outside the nylon, a man's voice said quietly, Lily, you still awake in there? I don't remember unzipping the sleeping bag. 1 second I was flat on my back, the next I was kneeling, hand over Lily's mouth, staring at the zipper. Dan hissed, Who's there? Silence. Then the footsteps retreated, crunching down the gravel, too slow to be embarrassed, too casual to be an accident. We spent the rest of the night in that half sleep where your body refuses to fully shut down. Every car door, every owl, every anonymous cough a few sights away felt suspicious. First light couldn't come fast enough. At the camp office, I told the host what happened. I described the man, mid-50s, blue jacket, clean shaven, a day pack. I expected an eye roll or a, well, it's a public campground. Instead, the host's face changed. Did he say which site he was in? She asked. Just over there, I said. Why? She picked up a radio. Steve, are you around? We might have him again. A uniformed ranger showed up 10 minutes later. He listened to the story from the beginning, asking small, clarifying questions you only think of if you're used to writing reports. Did you ever tell him your daughter's name? He asked. I fought back. The walk by, the burgers, the Uno game. No, we didn't. He exchanged a look with the host. We've had a couple of complaints this summer, he said eventually. Single male, bounces between campgrounds, overly interested in families, especially kids. Nothing we've been able to charge, but enough we ask him to move on. Is he here now? Dan asked. The ranger shrugged. If it's the same guy, he's good at leaving early. My advice, if you're feeling uncomfortable, I can refund tonight and mark you checked out. Lily clung to my arm so tightly my fingers tingled. I didn't need to think about it. We're done, I said. We packed in under an hour. As we rolled past the other loop, Lily pointed. Mum, that's him. He was standing by one of the non-electric tent sites, hands in his pockets, watching cars leave. Same blue jacket, same ball cap. When he saw our SUV, his mouth curled into something that wasn't exactly a smile. The ranger's truck pulled up behind us. The man turned away and walked into the trees. That night, safe at home, I woke twice thinking I heard gravel crunch outside our house. There is no gravel outside our house, but it didn't matter. I still checked the windows. When friends ask why we switched to renting cabins instead of camping, I joke about my back and Dan snoring. The real reason is quieter. Somebody out there walked a loop in the dark, saying my kid's name like he had a right to it. We heard coughing under our tent. At first, we thought it was an animal, until we realised the ground beneath us wasn't solid. This happened last year on a remote campground in northern Idaho. It was me and my girlfriend, 2 nights into a week-long road trip. The campsite wasn't crowded, maybe 5 or 6 other groups spread out over a few acres. It felt safe, it felt normal. That's why it was probably so easy to ignore the first weird thing. When we arrived, I remember stepping around the fire ring and dirt felt soft. Not like normal soft, but hollow, like someone had dug under it. I even said, "Feels like a gopher tunnel," and stomped on it a few times. It didn't collapse, so I shrugged it off. We set up the tent, cooked dinner, watched the sunset. Exactly the type of peaceful night you imagine when you go camping. But around 1:30 a.m, just as I was drifting off, I heard it. A low, dry cough directly underneath us. My eyes snapped open. For a second, I thought I dreamed it. Then it came again, a soft, muffled noise, like someone clearing their throat under a blanket. My girlfriend whispered, "Did you hear that?" "Yeah, I heard it." I grabbed my phone flashlight and shined it around the inside of the tent, even though that obviously didn't help with noises coming from below. The coughing stopped. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it was probably an animal burrow, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the ground shouldn't sound like that. Morning made everything seem stupid. No weird noises, no footprints, nothing out of place. But the hollow spot, it felt even deeper now, almost like the dirt had settled overnight. That's when I noticed something else. A faint depression leading away from our tent, like a crawl space tunnel. Still, no obvious danger, so we stayed. Night 2 was worse. Around 2 a.m, I woke up because something brushed the underside of the tent floor. Not crawling, not scratching, but pushing up, like someone pressing a palm against the nylon. I froze. My girlfriend grabbed my arm so hard her nails left marks. Then we heard it again. A tap, a single, deliberate tap against the ground underneath us. Then a second, then 2 more, spaced out perfectly like someone tapping in a pattern. My girlfriend whispered, "Someone's underneath us." I didn't answer because I suddenly knew she was right. I reached for my boots, planning to run out the tent and check, when a sound came from directly outside. Footsteps, slow, heavy, human. The moment the steps reached the side of our tent, the tapping beneath us stopped. Whoever was under the ground was listening to the person outside, and whoever was outside wasn't talking, wasn't moving, just standing there. We didn't dare breathe. After maybe 20 seconds, the steps continued past our tent, heading towards the trees. When they were far enough away, I unzipped the tent as quietly as I could and stepped out with my phone flashlight. Nothing, just darkness and pine trees. But the ground around our fire pit was disturbed, not by an animal, by hands, finger marks, smudges, drag lines. Someone had been digging. Someone had been working under our camp. We packed up everything in 2 minutes and left before sunrise. When we got to the ranger station, exhausted, shaking, for he told them everything. The ranger didn't laugh, he didn't roll his eyes, he didn't act surprised. He just asked, "Did you see the entrance hole?" We hadn't. He nodded like he expected that answer. Apparently a man, they wouldn't give details, had been living in the woods for months. Not homeless, not a drifter, something else. He would dig shallow underground shelters near campsites and watch people through the soil. Listen to them sleep, sometimes steal things, sometimes worse. The ranger said, "He comes up at night. You don't hear him unless he wants you to." Then he asked us to describe the footsteps we heard outside the tent. When we did, his face went pale. "That wasn't him," he said quietly. "He never approaches tents. Someone else must have known he was living under there." Someone else, as in two people. One under us, one watching us. We haven't been camping since.